When the storm made landfall, hurricane-force winds only extended out 40 miles. We can probably even shrink that down now that this is barely a Category 1 hurricane with 80-mile-per-hour winds. 74 miles per hour makes it a hurricane. Anything less than that drops back to tropical storm status. And we may be at tropical storm status now as this thing is showing some rapid de-intensification. We talked about some dry air that might get wrapped into this circulation. It doesn't look like there's too much dry air out there. Now, one reason that we had several tornadoes across East Alabama and Georgia with Cindy is because we had some dry air off across Mississippi and Louisiana being wrapped into the circulation. And once that came around on that south side, where you would typically see tornado formation with a large area of low pressure on the southeast flank of it. Once that dry air got in there, it caused a rapid destabilization of the atmosphere. Now, without that dry air, we don't have cooling aloft, so the atmosphere really isn't all that terribly unstable, but we still have all these tropical downpours, and you'll notice that the wind may gust to 70 or 80 miles per hour. The rain will be coming down in buckets, but there will be very little lightning and thunder. And that's something very characteristic of tropical systems because the instability factor really isn't there like it is with big springtime thunderstorms. Here is a live shot outside. I believe this is our studios here in Hoover. And you can see that the trees are whipping around there, but it's not an extreme wind event here in the Birmingham metro area right now. We've seen wind gusts above 40 miles per hour. Legion Field has picked up a 45 to 47 mile per hour wind gust. Same thing over toward Anniston and Gadsden. We'll see the same thing in Talladega and Sylacauga. But for the most part, that's going to be about it. We're going to see the gusty winds, but because of all the heavy rain we've seen recently, it's rained just about every single day for about the last week in most areas in the Birmingham metro area, particularly up into Etowah and Calhoun counties. We've seen anywhere from 5 to 10 inches of rain prior to Cindy. Add on Cindy's rainfall totals of another inch or 2 or 3 inches. And, you know, once we start adding the rain from this storm plus the winds that are a little bit stronger than Cindy's winds, we're going to start seeing those trees come down. And power lines, of course, once the trees fall on the power lines, they come down too. So that's basically what we're dealing with tonight. Not a catastrophic wind event in central and eastern Alabama. The more concentrated damage is going to happen in West Alabama, places closer to Demopolis, Linden, down toward Jackson, Thomasville, Camden, and as well down toward Monroeville, where this storm is passing through right now. David, Linda?
You know, that's pretty interesting, and that looked like a nice house, too. That thing looked awfully expensive, but, you know, everybody's different. It's amazing. Some people just will not leave, and that guy was lucky. But I'm telling you, if Dennis would have gone into the Perdido Pass area, it would have been a whole lot worse at Pensacola Beach where that guy was located. So, once again, here's a summary of where we are. The center of Dennis is over North Monroe County, just north of downtown Monroeville. That's in southwest Alabama, about halfway between Montgomery and Mobile, moving more to the north. You know, we keep kind of looking for this thing to go northwest with time. That was the Hurricane Center track, but it just wants to go north. I mean, since about 2 hours before landfall, since about noon, this thing started moving north, and it's still moving almost due north at 20 miles per hour or so, and that's going to come right over Camden and Gee's Bend within the hour. That will take it to a point over Uniontown and Dayton and Marengo County, and then curving up toward Greensboro and Utah. And if this northward trend continues, that will certainly increase the opportunity for significant tree and power line damage in Tuscaloosa County. So that's just something to think about. You know, the original Hurricane Center track had this thing coming up around Columbus or Starkville, Mississippi. But now with the core of this thing moving due north, that will certainly increase the potential for wind damage on the western side of the state. We're going to watch for any possibility of tornadoes. And I need to mention that you see that red color back there behind the radar. We have a tornado watch basically for most of Alabama until midnight tonight. So far, we have not had any tornado warnings in our DMA, our designated market area. The tornado warnings have been down here in southwest Alabama, but we'll have to watch for any possible couplets in these spiral bands coming around Hurricane Dennis. We have an inland hurricane warning. All that information crawling across your screen. That is a new concept this year for something like this. An inland hurricane warning, meaning hurricane force winds are likely in those areas. And again, looking around the horn, we're getting reports of more trees and lines down. A number of counties in West Alabama, specifically Sumter, Choctaw, Marengo. And once again, that's going to be a big issue there in West Alabama. Let's go to our pinpoint Doppler weather radar. We've kind of focused in on the southwestern part of the state with that, so we'll change the source from the Sky Tracker to the pinpoint Doppler weather radar. That right there, that is what the eye wall, what remains of the eye wall that is now north of downtown Monroeville. And it's interesting to note that there's actually a little dry slot right in through here where I think the rain has actually stopped. That's still within radar range. And this is Conecuh County. This is Evergreen. That's U.S. Highway 84. And right in through here, that would be the worst of the weather coming up through the northern part of Monroe County. Jason has circled where the center of circulation should be, the lowest pressure. And remember, technically, this is still a hurricane. Hurricane Dennis moving a little west of due north. And on that track, the actual center is going to come up here into Wilcox County in the general area between Camden and Thomasville, places like Pine Hill, and then ultimately coming up right up here towards Sunny South, Magnolia, Thomaston, Dayton, and parts of Marengo County. And again, I'm telling you, it's going to be a pretty rough ride for Camden and for Gee's Bend, for Snow Hill, for Pine Hill, for Pineapple, ultimately up here into Dallas County. Selma's going to take a pretty good big hit from this thing. This is our future track. What you saw there, that was the system estimating the future motion of this storm. And within about 30 minutes, it projects the core of Dennis in the vicinity of Camden, back down here into far eastern sections of Clark County. And I'm just telling you, that's going to be trouble for Demopolis and for Linden and for Uniontown and for Thomaston and places like that. So all my friends in Marengo County, you need to stay in your bunker, your safe place until this thing passes. Treat this like a tornado warning if you're watching in Marengo County. Again, Linden would be located right here. That's Alabama Highway 28 that goes down through here. This town is called Thomaston. That town is called Consul. Dayton sits right here. Fawnsdale sits right here. You've got Providence right here. This is Gallion. That's Demopolis. The reason I'm naming out those towns, not to show my knowledge of geography, but to tell you if you live in those places, treat this like a tornado warning. Be in a good, safe place in your home until the core of this thing gets on by you later tonight. Unlike a tornado, it's going to take a while. This thing is moving at about 20 miles an hour, so it's going to take a while. And again, I want to stress the change in the timeline for most of our viewing area. We think the worst impacts of the weather will be from 9 o'clock until midnight. 9 o'clock until midnight. So keep that in mind. So before we toss it back over to Dave and Linda, let me check and be sure we have no additional. Okay, we do have a new report. In Elmore County, north of Montgomery, part of the roof has blown off a church near the intersection of Alabama Highway 14 and Alabama Highway 143. The church is called Robinson Springs United Methodist Church. So the winds are apparently very extreme in the Montgomery Metro. The winds are pretty extreme here. And again, I stress, Dave and Linda, we've had a wind gust to 45 at Legion Field, 47 at the Peach Water Tower. The winds will only increase between now and midnight. Back over to you guys. It really is. And, you know, Jason Simpson can really work that barbecue. Hey. It's just, you know, keep your arms and legs away from his mouth. This is a very, very nasty situation for West Alabama. Not to make light of that, but here's the situation. There is the center of Dennis in North Monroe County between Camden and Monroeville. And that continues to move more to the north. And we're getting reports of winds estimated to 50 miles an hour now in Tuscaloosa. And all of you from Monroeville and Camden all the way up through Demopolis, Linden, Uniontown, Greensboro, Utah, Marion and Perry County, then up here to Tuscaloosa, Centerville, Brent. More than likely, you're taking winds of 50 miles an hour in gusts, and that will only increase as the center of Dennis comes up from the south. We are a long, long way from having this thing over. And once again, we think for most of you, the peak of the severity of the storm in terms of the wind and the rain will now come from 9 o'clock until midnight tonight. Originally, we talked midnight to 6 a.m., but now we're talking 9 to midnight because this thing will just not slow down. Let's go to our weather net, and we'll take a look at the peak wind gust on the net and take a look at the numbers for yourselves. Unfortunately, we're kind of waiting on that data from Clanton to come in. We might have lost power down there, but if this Hopefully we'll get that in just a second. Legion Field in Birmingham, the peak wind gust so far, 45 miles per hour. At the Talladega Super Speedway, the peak winds are 47 miles per hour. At the Noble Street site, downtown Anniston on Noble Street, so far the peak wind 42 miles per hour. And notice the increase in the wind in Gadsden. The last time we checked up there, all those numbers were in the teens. Now we have Gadsden at 28 miles per hour, the peak wind in Cullman at 24. And let's go back to the Sky Tracker, and let me just read off some late reports coming in from the National Weather Service. From Russell County EMA. Now, remember, Russell County is over there near Columbus, Georgia. That's Phoenix City. They have a report of 28 trees down and 8,000 customers with no power. And as you heard from Kerry Kurlander, at the power company, the total statewide is approaching 200,000. With Ivan, we had over 800,000, and we have a long way to go here, so the power outages keep adding up. We have now reports of power lines down in Dallas County near Selma, blocking the roads between Selma and Orville. Alabama Highway 22 is that road that cuts down between Selma and Orville. And I understand, I know there are a lot of situations like that in various parts of West Alabama right now. We're not going to get reports of all of them because of sketchy communication down and through here. Now let's go to our pinpoint Doppler weather radar, and we'll kind of focus in on the exact location of the center. The circulation center is about right here. This is Monroe County. That's Butler County, Greenville, Chapman, Georgiana. This is Wilcox County. Camden is going to take a big hit. Downtown Camden here in the next hour, they're probably going to have winds that could gust easily to 80 or 90 miles per hour with sustained winds of probably 50 to 70 at least. We've got Highway 5 coming up in here, and again, places like Camden, Gee's Bend, Prairie, Catherine, Pine Hill. Those are all communities here in Wilcox County. And I'm telling you, Jason, it's amazing. Our computer algorithm here in the office is suggesting that this thing is going to march almost due north here. So if our future scan is correct, and it's a pretty good algorithm, I'm telling you, this will really increase the risk to Selma. And we've had reports of trees down here on 22 between Selma and Orville. So what this will do is really increase the risk of some pretty widespread major tree damage to Dallas County, to Perry County, including Marion, to Hale and Greene counties. And I'm telling you what, if this thing continues coming due north, it's making a beeline. And I'm talking the core. Of course, this thing with time will spread out, but I'm talking the core of this thing coming up toward downtown Tuscaloosa. And quite frankly, this will really impact the city of Birmingham greatly as well. I had to sneeze, Jason. I'm sorry.
Bless you.
Thank you for somebody said bless you in the ear. Thank you. It's very nice of you to do that. But again, if this thing comes due north, imagine that the core of this thing is going to wind up going through maybe Tuscaloosa County and Bibb County, and that certainly is not good news. We had kind of expected the core of this thing to hook up through eastern Mississippi, but I'm just not totally convinced that's going to happen. Jason has a line here where it looks like the core of Venice might wind up going for the next 3 hours. And that would put the core. And remember, we're not saying that's just the only spot where there's wind damage. We've got wind damage to the Georgia state line. But this would be the most severe wind damage, would be right over in this area between right now north of Monroeville back up to Tuscaloosa. So certainly we're going to have to be concerned about that. What Jason is doing is estimating some of the wind speeds. He's got 70 plus over here. And what's that, Jason?
That's about what you could expect in that core.
Okay.
And expected wind speeds.
Okay, I got you. It's kind of hard reading, you know, but you ought to see my writing. You think that's bad. Mine look like hieroglyphics on this thing, on the telestrator. And again, you get over here to I-65, and we're still going to have very high winds. Understand, we're not just saying in that one little strip, but we're just saying that we could easily see some hurricane-force winds in there, and that's winds of 70 miles an hour. And needless to say, that is pure tropical downpour. I mean, we are talking big time rains in here. Let's go to our graphic system and kind of go through some of the graphics we have here. A lot of people are just now joining us. This is the latest advisory package at 6 o'clock. Back then, at 6, this was a Category 1 hurricane. So technically it still is. There's been no new advisory since then. Sustained winds 80 miles an hour. North at 21. That number is very significant. That's the reason we're pushing up the timeline for the worst impacts for Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, Anniston, Gadsden, 9 to midnight. This thing was not supposed to be moving this fast. And as JB Elliott affiliate in there always says, with every tropical system, you have a number of surprises. The pressure keeps going up. The wind speed keeps going down. It's going to take a while for this thing to spin down. The track from the Hurricane Center has it going like that, and it's got this northwest motion, but I'm telling you, it's going more north than northwest right now, so we're just going to have to watch that. But that was the official track on the 4 o'clock advisory package. This is the wind radius forecast coming off the Hurricane Center advisory. This will be 11 o'clock tonight, if this is correct. It's got a little dot of hurricane force winds somewhere down around Galleon or Demopolis here, Newbern maybe in Hale County, and surrounding that, the strong tropical storm force winds of 58 to 73, and that would impact the track looks pretty good, maybe shifting a little more to the right, but that's not that far off the track there. And then it comes up and, of course, fades with time. That's 6 o'clock in the morning. That would be up here in the northwestern part of the state. We think conditions start to improve in Birmingham by then, and then by midday, the weather should be improving greatly. Inland impact, general concept here, and again, we're probably going to have to jog this over if that north trend continues. We've been jogging these maps all day. We'll keep jogging them, but that red you see here, if that northward trend continues, we'll have to adjust this more to the east, but that's sustained to 50 to 75 gusts, possibly to 90 in places like Demopolis and Marion and Selma and Linden. And then for the Birmingham metro and points east, sustained winds of 20 to 50 and maybe some higher gusts to 70. That's kind of on the upper end of that. The gust probably closer to 50 or 55. But remember, we've got a gust at Legion Field already to 45. So there's no doubt this thing is packing quite a punch, and it means business. And those are some of the communities with that inland impact. And in about the same area, we have this inland hurricane warning, where not sustained winds, but wind gusts could exceed hurricane force, and a tropical storm warning over here for the eastern side of the state. Birmingham kind of sitting on that line between the two. As you can see, some of the communities in the various advisories there. This is the radar, and these are tropical rains. In fact, let me look at the rainfall here. 1.93. We are rapidly approaching 2 inches. And in a normal cold season pattern, if you were to have a storm coming through here in the cold season, you look at this and you think, oh, it's just a nice, gentle fall rain or something. Nope, this is tropical rain. It's a whole different situation here. And accordingly, it's raining big time. So in River Chase, in North Shelby County, we're approaching 2 inches of rain. Down in here, the rains are just tremendous, close to the actual core of Dennis. The amounts would be lighter over here on this side of the state, but even over here, we've had some pretty good rains in East Alabama as well. Here's the big picture, and you can see Dennis coming up. For those of you that are just joining us, the landfall was about 2:15, 2:30 this afternoon, just east of Pensacola Beach, just west of Navarre Beach. That's in the far western tip of the Florida Panhandle, and now that's up here into southwest Alabama. And we noticed that the conditions are improving down here to the south, but these feeder bands are pretty wicked. We'll have to watch for tornadoes. I say we, our friends in Georgia. In fact, one of our affiliate radio stations on the radio network we cover is in Valdosta, Georgia, WAFT, and they've reported having to go on the air for tornado warnings down there today. Metro Atlanta was under a tornado warning at one point today. We had a tremendous couplet coming across downtown Atlanta, and Fulton County was placed under a tornado warning for a while, but to my knowledge, there was no damage. Let's go back to our Sky Tracker system, and as we do this, I'm going to check a few more of the damage reports from the National Weather Service in Birmingham and around the state, and I don't see anything new, Jason Simpson, on my end. We'll kind of check back with you here. Jason is manning the weather office, and we'll see if he has any new reports on his end. So we'll pitch it over to Jason Simpson from the weather office. Jason?
Actually, I do have a couple of new reports coming from eastern Alabama. This is coming from one of our spotters over here. It says a report from some spotters in the Gadsden area of trees down in Sand Valley in the Iva Lee community. That's based on communications from several reports in north central Etowah County, about 10 miles from Boaz. So that's up there between likely Gadsden and Sardis City. And then another tree down on Fairview Road north and east of Noccalula Falls in Etowah County. So some of the winds are getting pretty strong up into northeast Alabama too, but it's not going to take as much wind over the northeastern part of the state to knock down trees, as it will elsewhere, because especially across Etowah and Calhoun counties, we saw just a huge amount of rain over the last week with some summertime thunderstorms that just happened to sit over those areas for a couple of days into the afternoon hours for several hours. And with that 4 to 5 inches of rain in 2 or 3 days in the Gadsden area, we're going to see that soil being very soft, and the roots are going to have trouble hanging on. Now this, what you're seeing here on the radar display, is 1 hour precipitation estimates from the Birmingham NexRad. That's 2 inches of rain within 1 hour within the core of Dennis, coming out of Monroe County into Wilcox County. And if we, one good way to track this would be to really loop this, kind of give you an idea of which way the precipitation's coming from. Excuse me. First of all, we have the core down here into Monroe and Wilcox counties. That's where the strongest of the winds would be right now. And it's still officially still a hurricane. By all indications on radar, though, we're really too far away from any of the radar sites to be making any educated guesses as to exactly how fast that wind speed is down at the ground. But the good news is we have not had any tornado warnings with it over the last about half hour to an hour or so as it's come out of Monroe County, now moving into Wilcox County just south of Camden. But also, it's lost a lot of that circular signature. We don't see the same kind of rotational signature that we had earlier as it was coming through southern Monroe County. It's more of a line now, and it's just an extremely heavy tropical downpour, rainfall rates of 2 inches per hour. We do have flash flood warnings in effect for most of central Alabama because of tropical downpours like this. And as we go on into the rest of the evening, especially in West Alabama, this is going to be the case. James?
Let me pick it up before we go to the anchors. Just getting a lot of reports of trees down. Jason, I'm getting very concerned that Tuscaloosa County is going to take a big hit. We'll go back to the sky tracker, and the winds are getting to be very extreme in Tuscaloosa. I'm getting a number of reports of large trees down in Tuscaloosa, all across the county, not only from officials, but from individual viewers. And got estimates of winds now in the 60-mile-per-hour bracket in terms of wind gusts in Tuscaloosa. So we are getting numerous reports of down trees in Tuscaloosa County and all throughout West Alabama. Now I'm getting reports from Don Strink, who's the EMA director for the city of Roanoke. Now that's in East Alabama. Trees down in Roanoke County and the city, or in Roanoke City in the county of Randolph. Power outages as well. So like we've had great concern, we're going to have probably thousands and thousands of trees down in Alabama, especially in that area from Atmore, curving up to Monroeville, Camden, Marion, and Tuscaloosa. That is a live look at traffic on Interstate 5920 in Tuscaloosa. Those folks just need to take a chill pill and get off the road. You don't want to be driving with winds gusting to 50, and that's about what we have right now in Tuscaloosa. But I note the power is on down there. Alabama Power Company tells us the numbers are approaching 200,000 rapidly and increasing exponentially. And I would probably imagine we'll have close to 500,000 people with no power before this thing gets out of the state tomorrow morning. So with that, let's go back over to Dave and Linda at the anchor desk. Coming up here on 8 o'clock, we have been in continuous coverage here on our main signal since 7 this morning, on our digital signals since about 4 or 5 o'clock this morning, and we continue to do that as the worst of the weather has yet to arrive. And I know for many of you in West Alabama, the weather is absolutely severe in terms of wind and rain. For those of you in East Alabama, it's not quite as bad, but still we have potential for problems there as well. Even getting reports now of down trees in Blount County. That's, of course, northeast of Birmingham. That shows you the extent of the wind envelope here. But the core of Dennis continues marching north. And it's really amazing. It came in about right here, and there's a little bit of a westward component of motion, but not much. It seems moving more to the north. And again, that means the core of this right now is coming over downtown Camden in Wilcox County. That'll pass over the Alabama River, coming up toward Uniontown, coming up toward Marion, Centerville, Brent, Greensboro, and then ultimately Tuscaloosa. So we are encouraging everybody over here to stay in a safe place in West Alabama, as though this were a tornado warning for the entire western side of the state. We need to point out the National Weather Service has placed every single county in the Birmingham CWA, or County Warning Area, under a flash flood warning for tonight. That's a warning, not a watch. And there is a tornado watch for just about the entire state, in effect, that will run through the late night hours. Let's look at our Pinpoint Neighborhood Weather Net. Let's watch the numbers pop in. We're accessing the sites as we speak. So there's our weather net. And there's a look at the latest wind gust peaks over central Alabama. We have a peak wind gust of 48 miles per hour at Clanton, 48 miles per hour at Legion Field in Birmingham, a peak wind gust of 46 miles per hour in downtown Anniston. And again, the Tuscaloosa, Demopolis sites are out. We have no data from there. We are getting now that the Hurricane Center is going to downgrade Dennis to a tropical storm as of 8 o'clock. So in 1 minute, Dennis will be technically, officially downgraded to a tropical storm based on the latest advisory coming from the Hurricane Center, and that was expected. We'll go back to our Sky Tracker system, and we're about to pitch over to Dave and Linda in just a second, but before we do that, let's go back to Sky Tracker, if we can, back there in the back, and I want to show the actual big picture. There we go. Thank you. And the main concerns will be the possibility of isolated tornadoes, the possibility of flooding, and the possibility of just widespread straight-line wind damage coming from the core of Dennis. We see no evidence of any tornadoes so far in any of these spiral bands streaming out of the Gulf, but the greatest potential for any rotating storms would be near the old eye wall that's coming up through Wilcox County, and that's going to be coming up right into Perry County, Dallas County, Hale County, and ultimately Bibb, Tuscaloosa, and maybe Greene County. So those of you in West Alabama, you're going to be taking a big hit. For most of you watching us in our viewing area, the ABC 3340 viewing area, the worst of the impacts from Dennis will likely come tonight from 9 o'clock until midnight. It's 8 o'clock now, so we're talking just 1 hour away during that 3-hour window. So the three concerns, once again, flash flooding, the possibility of isolated tornadoes, and this widespread core of high winds and widespread tree and power line damage over here on the western side of the state in that general area from Camden up to Tuscaloosa, including places like Uniontown, Marion, Centerville, Brent. And, of course, to the east, the winds will be quite extreme as well. And Birmingham, as long as this thing keeps moving due north, we'll take a pretty big blow up here. So at that point, Dave and Linda, we'll go to you guys, and you're getting set for, I think, some live reports coming up here at 8 o'clock. Yeah, Linda, thank you very much. Again, we're going to be really in the core of this thing for most of our area. Between 9 and midnight, we're coming up on 8 o'clock. And again, let me just stress that we have the center of this over Wilcox County. You can see the core of this thing seems to be pretty close to Camden. And we just noticed this northward progression here. We have not seen much deviation from that. We'll take a closer look at this. And again, to give you an idea, this is Wilcox County right here. This is Dallas County. The city of Selma is right here. In fact, let me do a little closer shot right in through here. That'll put some of the smaller communities on there. That's U.S. Highway 80. This is Selma right here. Browns would be right here. That's where Highway 5 crosses U.S. 80. Uniontown is right here. That's in that panhandle of Perry County. You've got Gallion here. You've got Demopolis here. And that is this, I would imagine, with this convective batch coming up into Wilcox County around Camden. The winds are quite heavy. Now, remember, technically, Dennis was downgraded at 8 o'clock. We did get that full text of the advisory coming off the Hurricane Center. So now we are dealing with Tropical Storm Dennis instead of Hurricane Dennis. First time we've said that in a while. And Tropical Storm Dennis is making a beeline for Tuscaloosa. Again, this is Thomasville. This is US 43. There's Linden. There's Demopolis. And you can certainly see, based on that track, it's going to be a really rough ride. Many of our viewers in Tuscaloosa are letting us know that they have very high winds now and power going off and on. And, of course, once the power goes off, we really start to lose a lot of the reports that we have from our viewers, because so much of it comes in via electronic mail these days. But still, we're getting a lot of reports from our viewers, and we certainly do appreciate that. Here's a look at the north northern part of the state, the tropical rain bands extending well to the north up into the Tennessee Valley. But where you see the yellow with these tropical systems like this, the rain is just really extreme, and accordingly, the flash flood warnings continue in effect. Let's go to the radar, and I tell you what, Jason, if you could put on maybe some of the storm totals on the, we'll go to our pinpoint Doppler weather radar, and we're going to take a look at storm totals, and maybe you can pinpoint some of the totals on this thing. And let's see, we have 6 inches. Wow. That is the system representing 6 inches down here on the Wilcox-Monroe County line. That's in association with the core. And I'll caution you, radars don't necessarily do a good job with tropical systems. Sometimes they can underestimate, sometimes they can overestimate. It really depends on the VCP running by the Weather Service at these NEXRAD sites. I think they're using VCP 21 right now, which should be a pretty good one for tropical. But again, 6 inches right here on the Wilcox-Monroe County line. Let's take a look at some numbers up this way. Now, let me say this. This counts the rain we had yesterday. So this thing was reset about midday yesterday. So counting the squalls we had yesterday afternoon and today out here in the western part of Jefferson County, estimating 4 inches. 4 inches in Utah, 3 inches down here toward Bellamy in Sumter County, 3 inches on the Perry, Dallas, Chilton County line where those come together. And while we're looking at that, let me tell you our number here, our observed rainfall in River Chase in North Shelby County near the Galleria, 2.08, 2.08 inches. So that's a lot of water coming down. Let's take a look at the WeatherNet. Yeah, Jason Simpson just pulling up some new data back in the office. Let's go to our pinpoint neighborhood WeatherNet. This is the first wind gust we've measured in excess of 50 miles an hour. The wind gust now at Legion Field in Birmingham is 51. That's going to knock down a bunch of trees. And you have to remember with this, when Tropical Storm Cindy came through a few days ago, that really made the ground pretty soft, and we were concerned about the possibility of enhanced down trees because of that. So the peak wind now 51, Legion Field in Birmingham, 48 at the Super Speedway in Talladega and the Peachwater Tower in Clanton. And I tell you what, that Anniston number is coming up. We now on Noble Street in downtown Anniston have measured a wind gust of 46 miles per hour. And then the numbers drop off as you go north. The peak in downtown Gadsden, 28. The peak in Cullman, 24. The peak in Hamilton, 18. The gauges are out. The anemometers are out at Tuscaloosa and Demopolis. So the numbers keep coming up. We'll see how high we go on the scale. I wish we had numbers coming out of Tuscaloosa and Demopolis. In fact, let me step over here on the laptop and look at some of the FAA observations and see if by chance we've got the 8 o'clock hourlies in, and that will give us some information from the official reporting sites. Let's go back to Sky Tracker while we look at some of these 8 o'clock observations, and they are in, let's see, 8 o'clock, Birmingham at the airport. At 8 o'clock, the peak wind gust was 32 miles per hour. The peak wind gust at Anniston was 31. The peak wind gust at Tuscaloosa was 38. So on the 8 o'clock observation at the Tuscaloosa airport, that's across the river, of course, from downtown Tuscaloosa on the north side of town, winds gusting out of the, or averaging 29, gusting as high as 38. But based on these reports, it sure seems like we're getting higher numbers than that. In fact, the Tuscaloosa County EMA just reported winds to 46 miles per hour in Tuscaloosa County, and they are reporting, quote, numerous trees and power lines down. So once again, Tuscaloosa EMA reporting winds to 46 now with numerous trees and power lines down, and that's a good number. That seems to match all of the other observations we have with our pinpoint neighborhood weather net. And once again, that Legion Field site in Birmingham has gone now to over 50 miles per hour, and the numbers will keep going up. We think they will max out sometime between 9 o'clock and midnight tonight across the state of Alabama. So once again, this is our Sky Tracker system here. I'm going to move this down just a little bit, and you can see the actual center coming right up through Monroe County, Wilcox County, and that's going to keep on coming up to about Uniontown. The worst wind damage is going to be close to this core. In Demopolis, you're going to take a big hit here, and you're taking one right now. Conditions are extremely difficult, and right along that US 80 corridor from Demopolis over to Uniontown and Selma, and it sure looks like the worst part of this thing will come right over US Highway 80 in the vicinity of Uniontown. And as you can see, that steady march in the core will take it right up in the general direction of the city of Tuscaloosa. We should mention we have a flash flood warning for every single county in the CWA of Birmingham's Weather Service office or county warning area, which means flooding is imminent. 2.12. The rain is tropical rain really coming down here at our studio in River Chase. So 2.12 inches here. We'll check around. In fact, let's go back to the weather net and let's cycle through the rain numbers, Jason. We've got the peak wind gust on there now. These are the rainfall totals. And so far, we have the heaviest amount. Now, this number is not correct. The Clanton rain gauge is out. We do have the Tuscaloosa gauge working, 1.67 there. Legion Field in Birmingham has gone over 1 inch, 1.05. About a third, 3/10 of an inch now for Anniston and Talladega. Anniston, a higher amount there, about 7/10 of an inch, 4/10 of an inch at Coleman, under 1/10 of an inch so far for Hamilton, the rain gauge not functioning down at Demopolis. Let's go back to Jason Simpson, who's standing by in the office to see if we have any late damage reports coming in. Jason?
No damage reports from central Alabama, but a late report from our own Bill Murray reports that the Atmore mayor says significant structural damage occurred down in Escambia County, Alabama from the initial feeder band with Dennis. And let's go back to the radar image. I've drawn on here some of the things that are going on with Dennis at this time. I'll finish reading this report to you. Some ruptured gas mains, power's out to most of the town down in Atmore. The mayor does believe that it was a tornado that was involved with this, and Escambia County was under a tornado warning at one point because of the eye wall. State troopers are currently patrolling the town, but no injuries have been reported, and that's based on an interview from WKRG TV 5 down in Mobile. So here's what's going on with Dennis right now. We've got the center of the storm moving right up through Wilcox County at this time, just to the south of Camden. That's the area that's circled. The lines that are drawn on there are the wind direction. That's where the damaging winds are going to come from, the 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts. James is now changing that over to the storm relative velocities, and where you see those hot red colors, the high intensity reds, that's where we have 40 to 50 knot wind gusts, and that's roughly about 3,000 feet off the ground there over Hale County. Down into Wilcox County, that's minus 40 knots, 40 knots in toward the radar. At about 8,300 feet. So the higher up we're getting in this, the less ground truth we're getting. But still, we know that we're getting some ground truth based on our Pinpoint Neighborhood Weather Net, based on reports from airport ASOS equipment, and based on all the reports of trees and power lines that are going down around central Alabama. One thing of note, and James, I have seen this in the last couple of scans, if you can put the arrows back on there, and I think they are on, we have seen a couple of mesos developing into East Alabama, and that could be a signature that a couple of those storms over there may be trying to rotate. The good news is that the same kind of thing that caused the tornadoes with Tropical Storm Cindy last Wednesday, those same kind of atmospheric conditions are not present today. It takes some dry air to be able to do that. We have moist air from the ground up. These are mainly just gusty tropical downpours that are going to cause trees to come down, power lines to come down. At last count, I believe we were approaching 150,000 people in this whole state of Alabama without 200,000 people without power in the entire state of Alabama. That's likely to increase as this center, the core of Dennis, begins to move up into Tuscaloosa County. By the way, the National Weather Service is going to discontinue the inland hurricane warning, and everybody from Birmingham on down to the southwest will be under an inland tropical storm warning. Now, what's the difference in a tropical storm warning and an inland tropical storm warning? Not much difference whatsoever. It's still the wind. It's that's the definition that we're going to use, 39 to 73 mile per hour winds. That defines a tropical storm. And right there with that band coming through Wilcox County, where you see the reds and the oranges and the yellows, we have an extensive heavy rain, gusty winds. Matter of fact, right there across southern Wilcox County and northern Monroe County, in the last hour, we've seen anywhere from 2 to 3 inches of rainfall. That's an incredible rain rate. That's going to cause some flash flooding as this moves into the city of Camden. I would imagine that we start seeing some reports very quickly, 6 inches of rain, and I believe that is storm total. That's probably storm total or last 3 hours, one of the two. But over the last 1 hour, I know this is at least putting down 2 to 3 inches per hour. So this is moving on to the north into soil that's already saturated across West Alabama. We've seen plenty of heavy rain there the last couple of days. Last couple of weeks have been pretty wet, too. So for one, 40 to 50 mile per hour winds that might not normally knock down a tree on a typical summertime day are going to this time around because the trees are rooted in some very moist soil, and that helps to loosen that soil up quite a bit when it gets so soaking wet like it is right now. So as these heavy rains and the strong winds associated with Tropical Storm Dennis now begin to move up across Wilcox County, and this thing is still moving due north, and that is just amazing. The forecast tracks, all of our computer models that we put so much stock in have been taking this thing into Mississippi for the last about 36 hours, and this thing came inshore in Florida and has wound up staying in Alabama for about the last 6 hours. Ever since it crossed out of Escambia and Santa Rosa counties in Florida into Escambia County, Alabama, it's been steadily moving north toward U.S. Highway 80. It is now moving across Wilcox County, approaching Camden. That'll continue to move to the north up toward the sections between Demopolis and Selma, right there along U.S. Highway 80. James about to zoom in on that for us. And that Marengo County into Perry County, Dallas County, Wilcox County, that's where the brunt of the storm is right now. However, it is still pretty rough even beyond that. We've got strong, damaging straight-line winds in some of these bands that are going to be exceeding 45 to 50 miles per hour. In fact, the latest wind gust, the peak wind gust that we've seen so far in central Alabama, 51 miles per hour on the press box at Legion Field. That's from our live Pinpoint Neighborhood WeatherNet sites. And we'll recycle that in just a moment, see if we can pick up anything else. Unfortunately, the anemometers at Tuscaloosa, Clanton, and Demopolis are not working. Those would be very helpful in this case. We're working on getting those replaced, though, so we should get that equipment problem resolved pretty soon. There's some of the highways on there. US 43, Alabama Highway 5, Alabama Highway 22 from Selma back down into Marengo County. Those are areas of concern for extremely strong winds, and we're talking still tropical storm force winds, but probably the upper end of tropical storm force winds. As a matter of fact, let's switch over to the graphic system and let's talk a little bit about what Dennis is doing right now. This may give you a better perspective than the radar actually can, because basically all we're seeing with the radar is rain at this point. Tropical Storm Dennis as of 8 o'clock. Speed 20 miles per hour due north, maximum sustained winds at 60 miles per hour, but there are likely some higher gusts within that. Of course, the forecast track, and at this point in the day, we're not necessarily concerned about the fact that this is going up into the Ohio Valley and moving around very slowly. What we're concerned about is that track that continues to be a little bit to the right of the actual Hurricane Center's track through western Alabama. This thing is going to continue moving north. Now, here are the wind radius products from the National Hurricane Center. And keep in mind, this is now a tropical storm, and this goes back to 5 o'clock. This image is a little bit dated, but it still shows the radius of highest winds right there moving through central western parts of the state of Alabama. Places like Demopolis, Linden, Thomaston, Dayton, over into Dallas County around Selma, Gallion, Marion. Those areas you can probably expect the 58 to 73 mile per hour winds. If you're not experiencing them now, especially within the next hour, that's likely when they'll be moving in. Now, as we continue to go through time, the tropical storm force winds are really shrinking by the time we get to 6 o'clock tomorrow morning over northeast Mississippi. The center is forecast to be over Tupelo. Based on the trends that we've been seeing in the last few hours and the fact that Dennis just does not want to move to the west, I would move that center back over a little closer to Hamilton and Fayette. Would you agree, James? Moving it a little closer to Hamilton and Fayette by early tomorrow morning. And then into the next couple of hours beyond that, continuing to move on up into parts of Tennessee. So that's the deal. That's what's going on with the tropical storm right now. It's been downgraded from a hurricane. Switch back over to our pinpoint Doppler radar display. Extremely heavy rain now pushing in on Tuscaloosa. This is where our heaviest rains are going to be in the next 15 to 20 minutes across the Birmingham immediate television market. Tuscaloosa, Centerville, Brent, Marion, Utah, Sawyerville, Greensboro, Livingston, Demopolis, Reform, Gordo, maybe even southern Fayette County and western Jefferson County. That's where it looks like we're probably going to see winds in excess of 50 miles per hour, sustained around 35 to 45, gusting up above 50 miles per hour. This is all lifting up almost due north now. That mass of yellow there that extends across county lines from Utah to Marion to Centerville to Clanton, that's where gusty winds are present also. And the heavier that rain looks on radar, it's likely that we're having some entrainment downward of some of those stronger winds aloft, and that's going to help to increase the surface wind speeds along U.S. Highway 82, along Alabama Highway 17, along U.S. 43, along Highway 25, along Alabama Highway 5, along Highway 80. Those general areas, if you live within any driving distance of Utah or Marion or Centerville or Tuscaloosa, if you're at about 30 minutes of driving distance of any of those locations, this is going to be coming in and affecting you almost immediately. Into the rest of West Alabama, basically this is going to happen from I-65 to the west, or better yet, from US 231 on to the west, because we've still seen the gusty winds over eastern Alabama. Anniston and Gadsden have been affected by some of those spiral bands that are moving on up to the northeast side. And if you notice, a little bit farther back down to the southwest toward Montgomery, toward Auburn, toward Lynette, toward Columbus, Georgia, and Phoenix City, Alabama, the storm is drying out somewhat. That's not necessarily a sign of dry air so much as it's a sign that the storm is weakening. And as it continues to weaken, the winds will diminish. But this is still going to be a rough night from about here up until midnight for much of West Alabama. We're zooming in on a feature here across St. Clair County and Blount County now. This is one of the spiral bands, and that red arrow, that is a meso arrow, what we call a meso arrow. It's a shear marker that the system, the computer system that we have here, places on a thunderstorm that it sees some sort of mesocyclone in. A mesocyclone is the parent of a tornado. Based on that reflectivity and velocity data, it does not scream the word tornado at you, but with those kind of arrows showing up on a day like today, we have that shear in the atmosphere. Those are the towns that would be in the path of this possible rotation. That includes Holly Springs right up there in Blount Mountain, Inland Junction, Inland Lake around Appalachian High School. This will be coming right across, I believe it's Blount County Highway 27, then eventually crossing 231, which runs between Aniana and Asheville. So that's the general area there. It would be coming from the Asheville area right up towards Straight Mountain. There is no formal tornado warning for that, so it's just a rotation at this point, but there's likely some gusty winds in it. Farther to the southwest, across West Alabama into East Mississippi, we've got some viewers toward Columbus and Starkville. You're experiencing those heavy rain bands too. And by the way, the radar image that we're looking at here is the Birmingham NEXRAD. It's a little easier to penetrate all the way down into the center of Dennis with the Birmingham NEXRAD than it is with any of the other radars around. Of course, the Mobile, the Columbus radars are a little bit farther away, so it's a little easier to look at this from Birmingham's perspective. And that heavy rain shield lifting to the north, this is going to be approaching Alabama Highway 5, Alabama Highway 22, and then it's US 80 that runs from Meridian over to Cuba and Bellamy, Demopolis, toward, I believe it's Galleon, and into the southern part of Perry County, south of Marion, then over towards Selma. Uniontown, that's the town I'm trying to think of there between Demopolis and Selma. This entire thing is lifting almost due north. It has not deviated from that track from about the last hour or two. So we are very concerned about high winds and extremely heavy rain and flash flooding across Marengo County, Wilcox County, Perry County, Dallas County, and in the next half hour. And then as we lift this on to the north, we'll see those strong gusty winds and heavy rain moving into Tuscaloosa County. James, you're back on the wall with some updates for us.
Yeah, Jason, we are continuing to cover the arrival of Dennis, once a hurricane at landfall, just downgraded within the last half hour to a tropical storm. Again, here's a look at southwest Alabama, and this is the main area of concern for the highest wind in this general area from places like Selma, Linden, and Demopolis and Uniontown up to Marion and Perry County, Greensboro, and Utah, to ultimately Tuscaloosa, Centerville, Brent, and certainly looks like the core of this thing is going to be really giving Tuscaloosa County a very, very rough ride. I-65 corridor will see some very strong winds as well. And let's let's go to our Pinpoint Neighborhood Weather Net. Want to peek at that and see where we stand. And Jason, if you could cycle through this to the peak wind gust again. We want to show you the peak wind gust since midnight last night. We have now winds as high as 51 miles per hour at Legion Field in Birmingham. Winds peaking to 48 at the Superspeedway in Talladega and down in Clanton. 46 at Noble Street in downtown Anniston. Just a reminder, this storm is giving East Alabama a pretty good ride as well, but there's no doubt this is the core of the greatest wind. Unfortunately, the anemometer's out for Tuscaloosa and Demopolis, but we're getting many public reports of damage. So let's go back to the Sky Tracker here, but before we go back to Linda and Dave, and just want to go through some more reports here before we pitch it back over to the desk. We're starting to get reports now from Navarre, and a large part of the pier at Navarre Beach destroyed, but generally speaking, according to Bill Murray, damage in Santa Rosa County reportedly less than expected, and that's where Navarre Beach is located. That's between Pensacola and Fort Walton, so that's a great report. Now, again, I stress that the inland damage in Alabama will be worse than the coastal damage because of the way this thing came in. The mayor of Atmore, down in Escambia County, reports significant structural damage from the initial feeder band earlier today. Several buildings were unroofed, a ruptured gas main. The power is out to most of the town. The mayor believes it might have been a tornado, and that could very well have been the case. He said not as bad as Ivan, but still bad. State troopers are patrolling the town right now. Atmore took a very hard hit from Ivan. We have a report from Tammy Power, the lodge manager at Chehaw State Park, atop Alabama's highest mountain. That's in East Alabama, south of Anniston. Trees down, power is out. The generator is on, and they have closed the restaurant early due to the extreme winds and the large windows overlooking East Alabama up at Chehaw State Park. And again, many other reports coming in from viewers concerning downed trees and power lines all throughout this part of West Alabama. So as we toss it back over to Dave and Linda at the desk, the most extreme conditions west of I-65, but even in East Alabama, we'll see some trees down for sure. Dave and Linda, back to you. Yeah, you got to remember, Dave, that we have still the worst of the wind to come for Tuscaloosa and Birmingham. Again, this is the latest wind expectation coming from the National Hurricane Center. Will run this. This was as of 7 o'clock. This is as of 2 a.m. Based on the latest package coming from the National Hurricane Center, 2 o'clock in the morning. It's got the strong winds still over Birmingham, and that yellow would be winds of 39 to 58 miles an hour. The orange, that would be winds of 58 miles per hour to 73 miles per hour. That's going to knock a lot of power out over here in West Alabama, and you can see that is over Tuscaloosa, Hale, Greene, Sumter, and Pickens counties. And again, that time is 2 a.m. That might be a little slow. This thing is still moving along at a pretty good clip, and then it moves up to northeastern Mississippi by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Let's go to our Sky Tracker system. This is the big picture, if you will. And again, the actual center of Dennis is what's coming right in through here, through parts of Dallas and Wilcox counties. And of course, with time, the storm is weakening. Like we talked about, this is now a tropical storm, not a hurricane, but the core of this will be coming up through West Alabama, through places like Uniontown, Demopolis, Marion. And I will say this, I do think in the last few frames it is beginning to slow down somewhat. This thing has been just coming straight at us at a steady 20 to 25 miles per hour since landfall. Landfall was just east of Pensacola at 2:30 this afternoon, and it was just not slowing down. Projections from the models had it slowing down. I think finally it's starting to do that. I still think the worst of the weather, probably 9 to midnight, as the thing weakens after midnight. The improvement will be very slow because it's going to be awfully close to Birmingham and Tuscaloosa late tonight, and I still think it'll be a rough ride during the pre-dawn hours into tomorrow morning. But by daybreak, things should begin to settle down. By mid to late morning, things will be getting back to normal here. What I want to do is kind of expand this view out just a little bit and show the big picture, if you will. You can see the rain extending up into Tennessee. We have the spiral bands well into Georgia. Quite frankly, the greatest tornado potential more than likely is going to be in this spiral band right here that extends back into Florida. Those are the bands you look for where some dry air works in this from the south. We'll have to watch that for our friends in Georgia. But so far, no reports of any tornadoes in Alabama except maybe right there in the eye wall itself when it came through places like Atmore. So that's moving steadily north through West Alabama. On the eastern side of the state, we've had reports of trees and lines down there as well. Before I toss over to John Olshu, we'll take a couple of quick reports coming in from the National Weather Service in Birmingham. See, Nashville is posting a flash flood watch now for their counties up in Tennessee. US 31 down in South Alabama is shut down between Flomaton and Bruton because of trees over the road, and that's to be expected. Conditions down there have been absolutely horrible. John, let me pitch it back over to you for any late reports from the weather office.
James, I'm just getting in here and getting settled, starting to gather that data in as we're kind of trading shifts here. Jason Simpson, we're giving him a well-deserved nap right now. I'll just give you my observations. Driving in here, it was easily 30 to 40 mile per hour sustained winds. I was coming in from Alabaster, coming up 65. And the thing that I was worried about, especially as I was kind of on 31 near the trees, were the trees coming over as I was driving on the road. So you might want to be looking for that if you have to get out tonight, as the winds will be picking up. The other thing, I kind of missed the last 2 or 3 hours as I was getting a power nap, and the southern side of that storm is dry. I'm sure you've kind of commented on that, but the rain may end across the area by midnight or 1 a.m. Because of all the dry air that has entrained around on the southern and southeastern side now. Definitely the speed is something that is surprising, how fast it has moved and continues to move. Looking back at this, matter of fact, let's pull up the Sky Tracker again and just kind of look at this image. Yeah, I mean what I would have called, you know, the worst of it, or the outer eye wall starting to approach, what is that, 80 that runs between Demopolis and Selma. You know better than I do.
US 80.
US 80.
Right around Uniontown there.
So you get the idea. This storm is coming on quick. Those winds are going to start picking up, though, here from between 9 and midnight across the entire area, especially there through west central Alabama, Demopolis, Marion, Centerville, Utah, Tuscaloosa. It is about to be the time period where you get your worst winds. We were getting at the house in Alabaster already getting lights flickering on and off, so this may be when we lose the power around here. I am going to, since I'm in here now, James, I'm going to go ahead and plug the internet address, email address, so we can get some comments in, questions in, and any pictures that you may have, and I'll try to get them on the air from back here in the Weather Center. That email address is hurricane@abc3340.com. That'll come to us. I'll see it. If you've got a picture of some damage, you've got a question, you've got a comment, get it our way, and I'll try to do what I can to get that on the air with you. I'm getting into the conferences now, James, and as I gather some data, I'll get back with you.
Okay, John, we're coming up on about 13 minutes until 9 o'clock. This is Alabama's ABC 3340. We are in continuous coverage as Dennis is rolling through West Alabama. We'll stay with this through late tonight and ride this thing out with you. So the good news in terms of the big numbers, to our knowledge, there's only been one injury in the state, and that was in Montgomery from a tree falling on a car, and that's always been our concern in storms like this, or trees coming down on structures like that. So that's the reason we want everybody in a safe place during the worst part of this, and it sure looks like 9 to midnight is going to be perhaps the worst part between now and midnight tonight for most of our viewing area. We're going to have to monitor these spiral bands over here in southeast Alabama for the tornado potential. We've seen a few decent couplets showing up on the radar system over Georgia today, well to the east of the state, and we'll have to watch for those in East Alabama later tonight. We cannot rule out the chance of those. Over here on the west side of the state, the rain shield now as far west as Interstate 55 in Mississippi, but certainly that is the dry side, if you will, the good side, the west side. But even over here in East Mississippi, they'll see a lot of wind and rain. But this thing definitely is moving more north instead of northwest, according to the earlier tracks coming in off the Hurricane Center. Let's go back to our graphics package, the graphics system, and again, that was the wind radius graphic we were showing. We'll go to the next graphic on here. If I press the right button, that would certainly help. And I want to show some of the latest advisories in terms of what the Weather Service is doing. This was the inland impact, and now that Dennis has been downgraded, we can probably knock these numbers down just a little bit. And I'll tell you what, John, if you can access our weather net and bring up the gust, we're going to re-access that and bring those up in just a second and take a look. We have had winds gusting to 51 miles an hour in Birmingham at Legion Field. Okay, 49 at Anniston, 49 Talladega, 48 Clanton. Those are the numbers about 10 minutes ago. So we'll take that down and bring it back up. So once again, there's a look at the inland impact we're expecting over the next 3 hours here. And of course, the most severe widespread tree damage most likely will be on the western side of the state. This is the 8 o'clock package. Tropical storm Dennis moving north at 20, and that's been the deal. This thing is just moving along in a very rapid clip, although it seems like in the last couple of frames it's starting to slow down. The sustained winds at 60. The pressure is up to 972. When the thing bottomed out this morning, the pressure was down to about 930 millibars. And at that point, at 8 o'clock, it was pretty close to Camden. We'll run the track, and you can see the Hurricane Center continues to adjust it gradually to the east with time. They project this thing to stall out across the Ohio River. That might be a problem up there, but there's that track, and the worst effect should be along and east of that line. By the way, Dennis was a strong or a Category 3 hurricane at landfall. That is a major hurricane. Category 1 and 2 is not considered major, but a 3, 4, and 5, that is considered major, and that came into just east of Pensacola Bay about 2:30 this afternoon, and you can see the center steadily working its way north across southwest Alabama and heading up in the general direction of Tuscaloosa. At the rate that thing's going, that core is going to be pretty close to Tuscaloosa by midnight tonight. There's the radar, and what you see is what you get. Very heavy rain falling, and again, it seems like a little dry air is kind of wrapping into this thing from the southeastern side. In a way, it's good in that the rainfall rates have diminished over here, but in a way, it's bad. That might be a sign we could see some areas of rotation within those spiral bands. We'll have to watch carefully that far eastern side of the state for the possibility of isolated tornadoes for the rest of the night tonight. Satellite presentation. There she comes, right inland, and it was really quite a drama this morning. If you were up with us between 5 and 5 o'clock this